Good evening, you are watching the Punter on Sports Tonight. I'm Trevor Harris and I'm delighted to say, after a few days' absence, the butler's back. Nigel Seeley, how are you, Nigel?
I'm alright, Trev. Could do with a bit of sunshine, enjoy some racing and some proper sport, but not to be. It's just, this is costing us a few quid, this weather, you know. It's not very good.
It was a magical weekend of sport, wasn't it, with the tennis and the motor racing. And in the last couple of days, the heavens have opened. It's affected all the race meetings, the cricket, and all kinds of other sport. And that's a massive problem for bookmakers.
Yeah, I mean, you can only. I mean, obviously the Grand Prix goes on with the rain, and punters want it to rain, so that's a good thing. I mean, obviously the tennis went on because we've got a roof, but yeah. I mean, I'm looking at weather and seeing 4 or 5 horse matings being abandoned a day. You wouldn't see that. You see that in November. You see that in December. You see that in January in frost and heavy snow. And, you know, betting shop punters going in having a bet. I mean, 4 meetings to be losing in July. It's unheard of. Yeah. Flooding everywhere. I mean, I reckon it's costing the bookmaking industry a right few quid, but good job they've got the roulette machines to keep their profits going. Because if it wasn't for that, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
But it
doesn't help the on-course guys. Of course,
but it's just a bit depressing, isn't it? We need some sun. I mean, the British summer, we need a couple of days to get involved with it, but it's not happening, is it? It's not good.
Well, there is plenty of sport that is still happening. We're going to try and cover a lot of it in the next hour or so. And football's back. Big game tonight for Portadown, playing Northern Ireland, of course. And they're up against Shkendija from Macedonia. It's a Europa League first qualifying round, second leg game. First leg was goalless, which was a great result for Portadown. So interesting match. And what I want to speak to you first of all about before we look at the game is just in terms of football betting. We know it's number 2 behind racing in terms of sort of revenues. At this time of year, do punters still want to wedge onto football?
Well, I think football's number 1 now. I mean, he's overtaken. I mean, as a young breeder punter, they like the football. I'm not quite sure if today's match is going to attract all the big hitters out tonight. I mean, but it is the only thing on there. There isn't much on to people to bet on, so this is an opportunity. But football is without doubt the one that everyone wants to get involved in. You only look at marketing departments now, and racing has gone away.
Racing in the shops is still number 1, isn't it? In the actual shops.
I don't think in betting shops. I'm not so sure if it is. I think football's number 1 turnover now in sport. The number 1 sport for turnover in this country, bar none, racing. I think betting shop turnover is because of roulette machines and stuff like that, which betting shops bring in, but definitely overtaking horse racing.
Okay, very interesting. Let's have a look at the match odds for tonight. I think there are a couple of markets we can get involved in. The odds are as follows, and basically the bookies don't know. I don't think they know a massive amount about Shkendija, to be honest. I don't know too much about Portadown.
She was number 1 when she was going to go with Gerald Piqué, Shkendija. No,
something like that. 13-8 Portadown, 7-4 Shkendija, 12-5 the draw. They have actually had a lot of high-profile players left them after the season, Shkendija. They're a young side, and maybe that was one of the reasons that Portadown managed to get a result in the first leg. They had quite a lot of the possession, the Macedonians, without being able to capitalise on it. Portadown probably won't change their approach from everything I've read today. They'll be very solid, defensively set out. The draw might be the one here. I tend to look at markets when the draw's the outsider of 3, when both sides are a similar price, and think that's probably where the value is.
That's not a bad strategy to play. I mean, the only way. I mean, let's be honest with you. I know absolutely nothing about these 2 teams at all. But I mean,
I thought you were a Shkendija expert.
Well, no, Macedonian league's not Latvian. I'm more of an Latvian league now.
Right.
I mean, the thing is about this is you look at the 2 terms and you look at how you would bet the 2 of them on an international match. That's how I would look at it. I mean, if
Northern Ireland v Macedonia.
Northern Ireland v Macedonia. You know, how would you sort of look at it? Now the Northern Ireland side is obviously not going to consist of many Portadown players, but the Macedonian team from this Shkendija will probably be a mainstay of a few of their international players. And I think Macedonia away at Northern Ireland will probably be around about a 3-1 shot. But bearing in mind, they will be full of the Macedonian national side. If they drew 0-0 at home, if the day that I back an Irish team in Europe in football is the day I give the game up completely.
Well, surely it depends on the price, doesn't it?
Well, no, I just think they're just leagues. I mean, this league must be, I don't know the levels of the 2 of them, but I mean, if they were 0-0, they're a young side and they had a lot of possession. Possession is everything. I know guys, big syndicates who look at football all about possession. We saw Liverpool last year being backed all the time because the possession stats in Asia, Far East, that's what they govern their bets on. How many times they hit the crossbar. You look at Spain. Spain won. People said Spain couldn't win the European Championship. They kept more possession than anybody. And if Shkendija have kept possession alarmingly, but just couldn't put their chances away, I've got to go for the Macedonians because I think a good level Macedonian side. I think there'll be international players against a Portadown side. But one thing I would say is the weather at the moment could make this game be a little bit of a mockery. So there's a couple of other angles maybe to look at rather than actual match odds.
Okay, in case you're wondering, Shkendija, by the way, finished third in the Macedonian League, and Portadown was second in the Northern Irish League, so not a great deal to choose between them on that front. I think the market that might pay dividends tonight is the under-overs market. There's no question that Portadown are going to play in a very similar fashion that worked for them in the first leg. They're not going to go pouring forward and commit footballing suicide, and I think there'll be very few goals. Let's have a look at this under-over market. Well, it's 1 to 3 for more than 1.5 goals, 2 to 1 under 1.5, and then it starts to become odds on if you want to play it that way. 4 to 6 fewer than 2.5, and well, big odds on 1 to 4, less than 3.5. But I might be quite tempted by playing the unders, because don't forget, a 1-0 win will do for either of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, I can only go under 1.5 here at 2 to 1, under 2.5 goals at 4 to 6. I mean, people who are new to this channel will know that I always predict under 2.5 goals, because I just think the value is always in that market, because people back things that they want to see.
Yes.
They want to see goals, they want to see action, they want to see yellow cards, and always the value is to go under these markets, especially with the weather. I mean, we've lost 2 race meetings today in Ireland. Have been watered, and one other race meeting that went ahead is the heavy ground. So there is an awful bogginess and hitches. And from my history, if there's ever heavy weather is the most important thing in betting you cannot possibly imagine. If it's in rugby, you always sell the points. If it's in football, you sell the bookings. You go under the bookings, you go under the goals. Referees are much more lenient for tackles and goals. There's bogmires in the pitch where the ball sticks, and it's very, very hard. So weather, from the 20 odd years that I've traded sport, if ever I see it start to rain, I bring goals down, I bring bookings down, and I bring points down. And I think under 1.5 goal here,
it's interesting.
1.5 at 2 to 1 is a bet.
Interesting you say that when it starts to rain, you bring the goals down, because I think there would be a school of thought that says when it's wet, it's harder for defenders and you'll get more errors.
No. That's what people hope, because that's what it means that the ball just sticks and it's very hard to pass a ball. It's very hard to kick a ball. The ball gets stuck. I mean, when it's really heavy, it doesn't travel so far. It's hard to pass. Everything goes down. Everything goes down. Referees are much more lenient in weather conditions.
Yes, they give
if a sliding tackle comes in, they say they blame it on the pitch. They're much more lenient.
So, there's a really interesting bit in Dave Farrer's book, The Perfect Punter, where he talks about he goes to an American football stadium. Can't remember exactly where it was, somewhere in the States, obviously. And he noticed that the flags were really fluttering. It was extremely windy down on the pitch, and you couldn't really necessarily tell high up in the stands. And he went down to pitch level, and it was literally suddenly blowing a gale. And he's thinking, this is going to make it more difficult for the quarterback to pass accurately, more difficult for the kickers to kick from any kind of distance accurately. And on that basis, effectively sold the points. And it worked. So this is interesting.
No, it is. I mean, weather is it's just horse racing. You know, the only sport that I can confidently say doesn't really affect is snooker. But the other than that, the weather is the most important thing. I can't overemphasise how much that it means. I mean, people will always plan weather, and you look for angles in weather. Now, this game here, I know nothing about the two teams, but if I turned on whenever I watched the game and I saw the conditions absolutely bucketing it down, I would be very, very tempted to go under the goals and very tempted to go under the bookings. Just purely simply looking at it from a blind perspective.
We were talking earlier off air, weren't we, about the effect that the roof going on at Wimbledon had on the Murray-Federer match at the weekend. It's another example of how conditions change matches.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for weather conditions that I can always remember is rugby. I mean, you say about my first idea of running a rugby game, the weather comes down, more errors, more handling errors means more tries. It's impossible, because 5 slogs, the ball slips out your hands, there's knock on, there's much more effect. A line would go from 39 points down to about 32, 33 points on the back of weather, and they still haven't moved it enough. And goals in weather, you look tonight, if they come on and it's really, really heavy conditions, the under 2.5 goals will be slashed into 6 to 4, 7 to 4. So look at Portadown's website, on all the different websites, see what the weather's like, and that would definitely be on play tonight.
It's good advice. Let's have a look. 7:45 tonight, by the way, the kick-off here. Let's have a quick look at the to qualify odds between these two teams. I don't imagine there'll be a massive amount in it. Well, there is a little bit, actually, more in it than the actual 90-minute market. Don't forget, if it's 0-0 tonight, that's the only result that can take it to extra time and potentially penalties. 5 to 4 odds against the Irish. They are the outsiders. Shkendija are 4 to 7. I know you said earlier, but you probably find this, or you probably think there's better value backing Shkendija on the 90-minute market than 4 to 7 on the outrights.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I was just purely simply based up on international football levels. So I mean, to look at the fact that the angle for me on this game is the weather conditions,
Yeah.
and the angle is the under 2.5 goals. To qualify means that there's a likelihood that it might go to penalties, because I think it could be a 0-0 or that's a big runner, a 0-0. So if it goes to penalties, Portadown could be a bet at 5-4, a little bit of value in something that then is an each of 2 game. But for me, just stick for the low scoring, correct scores and go under 1.5 goal. Nick 1-0 either way.
Okay. I want to have a look at a bit of a chat about the outright Europa League market, because it's always seemed bizarre to me that people want to play on this market when we know there are going to be 8 Champions League teams coming into the tournament when it reconvenes in February after the winter break. I'm not sure how you can look at the teams that are in it now and decide I'm going to back them when you have no idea who the other strong sides are going to come in February.
I mean, in all the years that I've looked at books and priced at books, I can't recall more than one bet ever being struck on the Europa League or the Europa Cup at this time of the season, unless it was a Manchester City that we know have got money coming in and they were 33-1 and someone's backed them at 33-1 knowing they're going to shorten, or Paris Saint-Germain knowing they've got money coming in. And you might have a few sort of people backing Liverpool and Tottenham here for their own pleasure, Liverpool and Tottenham fans. But anybody backing the team here, you could back a team. Inter Milan could be 14-1. We don't know. Manchester City went in this competition last year and went installed as favourites. I mean, no one knows what teams are going to put out. It really is. It's the most open market there is in betting. 4-1 favourites. You will not be able to find a market that's got a bigger price favourite than a 14-1 shot than the Europa League. But it's still a minefield. It's impossible. It's very hard to find any value. You've got the Russian side there. I'll let you pronounce them. But the ones
I'll just say Anzi.
they're the ones who have obviously got Etu and all that, the money coming in. I mean, if they go out on a big spending spree, perhaps that may be a little bit of value. But no, we don't know what the likes of Liverpool are going to do with the players they're bringing in. We don't know what Tottenham are going to do. So, realistically, anybody who's this is someone who's desperate for a bet to look at this one.
Anzi are actually joint favourites with Sky Bet, and if you're wondering what price Portadown are, they're 2,500 to 1. If you want to.
Well, Anzio would be the one. If they could go out and buy 3 or 4 players, but 20-1 they started off well. They could be the trading team. They could go off 10-1 favourite because people would be scared of their name and reputation and their bank money.
What gets me about the Tottenham price is we saw last year when Spurs were in the Europa League, and they basically wanted to be out of it by the end of December, and they succeeded. They weren't interested in it. They were interested in trying to charge for a Champions League place, and at one time they were being touted as potential champions. Now, okay, Harry's gone and AVB's come in, but I'm not completely convinced until I see what kind of size he starts to pick for these games, because they were picking the kids last season.
Yeah, I don't think he will this time around, because he's got a history in this competition. He likes to do well in it.
Of course.
I think it's silverware. I mean, Tottenham have probably gone backwards.
But he's been charged with getting him into a top 4 spot, and the problem is when you're playing Thursday nights, it can have a detrimental effect on the league, can't it?
Well, let's see how their form is after 6 games.
Yeah.
If they're languishing at the middle top bottom, I mean, it's just because they got off such a good start last year. That's why they took it. I mean, I don't think they're going to. Even the greatest Tottenham fan is not going to. I don't predict they're going to be anywhere near what they were at the start last season. I still think they'll take it seriously. I think if you look at Tottenham through the history, the great night that they won the UEFA Cup, they talk about it now against the Anderlecht, wasn't it? They keep talking about it all the time now, and they need.
Tony Park saved the penalty.
and they need silverware. So the thing is, I think they'll take this seriously. I think Liverpool will take it seriously. Newcastle are the one for me. They haven't got the big enough squad. We don't know what sort of team they're going to put out at the start of the season. They're selling players at the moment. A couple of injuries in key games. They're definitely going to take this competition second string to the league. But out of all of them, if I was forced to have a speculative few quid and hope the odds shorten, it'd be Anzi.
Okay, all right. Champions League, to me, is a more interesting market, the outright market, than the Europa League, because at least there's no team's going to come into it in February. Usual candidates. So one really interesting team for me, amongst others, well, there were 2. Manchester City's one, completely bombed out last season, didn't get out the group, to most people's surprise. And the other one is Barcelona, with Pep Guardiola obviously having departed. They are third favourite City. Barcelona is still favourites, but not as short as they were last season at this stage. I think they were 5-2 last season. 4-1 Real Madrid splits Barcelona and City. United are 14s. There's a massive gap, isn't there, between the top 3 and everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're quite short, Barcelona and Real Madrid. I mean, 22 and that's 6-4 that you're backing one of them two teams. 11-8, you're backing one of those two teams to win the cup. So you're getting 8-11 every other team in the competition, or 11-8 those two. I think that's a little bit short. I mean, we saw how much they sort of they're arguably a better team, if not as good last year, and they let them down. I think Manchester United at 14-1 could be some value, because I think Robin van Persie could go there, what I'm hearing. I think if they get Robin van Persie, they're a serious threat with Rooney and Van Persie. And Paris Saint-Germain on that list. I mean, I think, you know, they've got. I'm sure they're in the Champions League, but I think they're a team that could spend massively. You know, Lyon did so well before. I think Paris Saint-Germain at a big price.
I just worry sometimes about backing a team with absolutely no pedigree in the Champions League. I know they've got money. I know that they won the league last season, but as we saw with City last season, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll go straight in and acclimatise.
I think it's to do with the coach. I
think
it's to do with the coach. I think it's to do with the coach. I think you've got Ancelotti.
Yeah,
if I was going into a Champions League game and I had Roberto Mancini or Ancelotti in my corner, I'd have Ancelotti every day of the week. He's seen it, done it, won the competition as a manager and a player. Whereas the other guy, Mancini, a little bit gun-ho in his approach in the Champions League, let him down against Bayern Munich. But I think it's all to do with the manager here. I think, you know, you look at people who know what they're doing, you know, apart from last year where you got someone, Di Matteo's a bit of a rookie. But I think Sir Alex Ferguson and Ancelotti, wise old heads on the shoulders, I think they can get them through at decent prices.
25-1, by the way, best price about PSG for the Champions League. They are as short as 16s elsewhere. There is some fantastic boxing coming up this weekend, and we'll look at two of the highlighted bouts after the break. Welcome back to the Punter on this decidedly wet Tuesday. You're watching Sports Tonight. We're going to talk boxing. A couple of excellent bouts coming up over the weekend, or potentially excellent. Certainly the most publicity-grabbing fight sees David Haye fight Derek Chisora, Nigel. Now, all sorts of people have had their opinions about whether this fight should even be happening after that brawl at the press conference in Munich. I just wonder, from a bookmaker's point of view, as soon as Frank Warren announced this was happening, I reckon bookies were rubbing their hands together, because there's nothing like a bit of bad blood and a perceived dislike of one fighter or another to really get punters interested and fight fans interested.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a bookmaker's dream. Two people who generally don't like each other fight each other in a big bout. I'm not quite sure it's going to get people punting like the likes of like a Frank Bruno fight against Tyson or them big Ricky Hatton fights, because I don't think boxing as a whole is a sport that basically has got the public perception of what it was. I mean, the betting on boxing now is minuscule. I mean, I am talking minuscule. On the days before, we used to have Ben in Eubank on a Saturday night. The turnover on betting then was massive. Now the likes of motor racing, basketball, all these other sports have made boxing something that this is the sport that's gone backwards in the last 15 years as far as betting turnover, when other sports, like rugby league for example, the turnover of rugby league will be 10 times more than a game like this on a Friday night.
Well, by the way, the latest, if you haven't heard the latest in this fight, Chisora is now called Haye a drama queen, because Haye didn't turn up for one of the media events to promote this fight. Apparently said he overslept, whatever. This fight being licensed by the Luxembourg Boxing Federation, because they're not licensed here in England. Yeah. The whole thing's quite mad. But they've sold about 30,000 tickets for Upton Park this weekend. So
more than they have done for a couple of seasons.
Well, that's an old joke, but still funny.
It's still good.
Yeah, but clearly they've tapped a nerve in the public's interest, haven't they?
Yeah, the media machine is getting out, the PR machine has hyped it up, but as a boxing spectacle, I think it's going to be very boring. I think it's going to be.
Do you really?
I think it'll be explosive, but it's going to be just like a pub brawl. I mean, you could.
But that's great viewing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's going to be great viewing. I don't think it's going to do the sport of boxing any good, and I don't think it's going to do betting on sport of boxing any good, because I can see something stupid happening in the fight, like he did with Vander Holyfield and Mike Tyson all those years ago. I can see someone doing something silly, just getting overboard, and the quality of fighting will be ridiculous. I mean, these two really, they're going nowhere in their careers, both of them. I mean, and they needed something like this to happen.
It's not about progression, it's about a grudge.
Yeah, but it's about, yeah, but they needed something like this to happen to spark it up. I just don't think, I mean, boxing has been a great spectacle. We've got some great world champions, we've had some brilliant fights in the past, but it's a sport, as far as the betting perception is, it's in the doldrums. You know, the biggest sports star this year, I think, is Carl Froch. I think if he had his day 10 years ago, I think he's been an absolute asset to the country and a superb talent for the country and a great ambassador. But no one knows him. You walk down the street, no one will know him.
No.
But they know about these two because of it, and I think it's wrong for boxing. And I don't think I don't think people will really bet on it as much. But there is a fight, there will be interest in it, and it's live on television. So it brings us all to opportunity to make a few quid.
Okay, well, if you have got a view on that fight, by the way, the man who has organised it, Frank Warren, will be here, Sports Tonight, live in the studio this Thursday between 8 and 10 on our evening show. So you can tweet, text, phone, and get your point across to Frank there. Meanwhile, let's have a look at the odds for this fight, because there was never any question David Haye was going to be a favourite, a big favourite at that. He's got the better pedigree. He's unquestionably the better technical boxer, and he's 2-5. Chisora 29-10. I think actually Hayes, that price has got a little larger in the last week or so. I'm sure he was short on that. The draws are 33-1 shout. Were you saying to me that, clearly they both want to win this fight because they want to get bragging rights over the other, don't they?
Yeah, I think Haye will knock him out easy.
Yeah.
I think Haye will knock him out inside 5 rounds. But what happens with boxing fights like this is, on the build-up to the fight, the underdog always gets nibbled out and the favourite gets big, because basically anyone looking at a fight will have a tenner here, 20 quid there, 30 quid there, and some overconfident young lad looking at his boxing position will say, oh, Chisora's going to cost us $3,000, Haye's a winner, let's make Haye a big price. The night of the fight, 2 hours before the fight, the favourite always gets backed off the boards, and that's what will happen here. David Haye will get backed in to like 1-3, 2-7, 4 on shot on the night of the fight. Chisora will be a big price, and Haye will win easy.
So the advice, if you want to back Haye, is get on now while it's 2-5.
Definitely get on now, because what will happen is, but the trouble is, the bookies will look at their book and they will feel there's no money on it. So they'll wait till they feel the money on it. So if you go in now, you will spoil the price for everybody else. Because if you fancy David Haye to win and you have your 500 quid, he will automatically go to 1-3 on the back of your bet. But what you want to do is you want to probably wait a little bit more, because the tenors and 20 quid. But on the night of the fight, all the serious punters will only have Haye. He cannot be opposed at the prices, I don't think.
Well, I'll tell you already, Stan James are 1-4 about David Haye. So they've
that's 100% book, isn't it? I mean, that's 100. Basically, in betting, you have everything is a percentage, and you could back Haye there at 2-5, and you can back Chisora at 5-2 with Stan James, obviously 1-4 and 5-2, and you won't lose anything whoever wins. So that's telling you that there's 2 bookmakers taking an opinion here, but I personally think the 2-5 Haye's the wrong opinion.
Worth reiterating, by the way, all the prices you see on the Punter are the best prices. So we give you the best possible prices, and there are a whole load of ways where you can find out which bookmaker is offering you those prices. You mentioned that you fancied Haye to knock out Chisora. So let's have a look at the method of victory in this fight. Well, Haye by knockout, TKO or disqualification, you get 13-8.
That's got to beat a bet. I mean, Haye's the technical decision or decision. This fight's not going to go to points, is it? I mean, let's be fair. It's not going to go all the way. Someone's going to knock him out. I cannot see the fight lasting longer than 6 rounds, and I think Haye will win it. But I think Chisora will cause him problems early doors. If he can escape it, I think 3, 4, 5. Haye will turn on the start. Chisora will go out and knock him out in the first 2 rounds. We know what he's going to do, and that'll play into David Haye's hands, and he'll have too much reach, too much speed, and I think he'll be too strong.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. And what you sometimes also get in fights where there's quite a lot of bad blood around is that sometimes the boxers, because they are so keen to make an early impact, some of the defensive stuff goes out the window. Yeah. They just want to really hurt the other guy.
It's going to be a messy fight. First 2 rounds, the referee's going to come in, break him up, put him in the corner, and basically Haye will just use his technical ability to knock him out in about the 5th or 6th. But you look around for some specials. I remember, I think some bookies more betting on both fighters to have a knockdown. And that's not a million to 1. I can't remember what price it was. It was around about 25-1. I think it was.
I don't think Haye's been down many times in his career.
Well, I think he's got that in his cruiserweight days. He's gone down, got up. Yeah. I think he's always still got this doubt about his chin though. And I think if Chisora does catch him with his white, you know what he's like. He's going to be coming in with the lefts and rights. Yeah. And I think that could be a decent bet. But Haye will win it, and I think Haye will win it by knockout.
2-1 at Ladbrokes on a Haye win in the first 6 rounds, I can tell you. So that might appeal as well. Yeah,
I mean that's not a bad. I mean I can't see it going past 6 rounds. I mean some bookies do groups of rounds. The fight goes 1-6, 6-12, or points. I mean go 1-6, either of them, because if Chisora does win, I think he could catch him in the first 2 rounds. Yeah. The longer it goes, the more it's going to suit Haye, I think.
All right. Well, there's. I think for the purists, a much more interesting fight. It won't be a brawl probably this weekend. It's at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, where Amir Khan takes on Danny Garcia. Remember all the hassle that Khan had. He lost to Lamont Peterson, who subsequently failed a drug test, using steroids. That was the man in the hat and all that kind of controversy. But this should be a big fight, a good fight, and I'm not sure, we'll see the odds in a minute, I'm not sure the bookmakers have got this completely correct. They reckon that Khan's going to win easy. I'm not so sure. Danny Garcia is an unbeaten fighter. He knocks out more than half of his opponents. He's a world champion. This guy's no mug.
He's no mug, but he hasn't really gone into with the likes of Amir Khan, has he? I mean, he's 23-0, but the 23 fighters he's fought aren't of the calibre of Amir Khan. The trouble is Amir Khan sometimes gets overconfident against these fights and thinks I've just got to show up and do in first gear. And if he doesn't get in first gear, he's in trouble. He needs to go straight from the off. He's the most talented fighter we've got in the country, Amir Khan, but would you back him at 4-on? No, because he's always leaves himself open. He's always susceptible to a big punch, and the Garcia's definitely got a puncher's chance. So again, I don't think he's going to go long on this one. I don't think it's going to go away to points.
You say Garcia's not beaten anyone of any quality. He beat Eric Morales in March, who's a very good fighter. I mean, I think this is partly, this is if you looked at the book stateside, I'd be quite interested because I would think it would be slightly different. They still have Khan as favourite, but not as short as that. In fact, 1-4 is the standout price. It's like 1-5 all over the place.
Yeah,
1-6.
I think Khan is a very, very. I think he's well liked in America. I mean, you say about his style they like the way he is as a fighter. I think he's quite a confident selection in the Vegas sports books, unlike other British people who've gone there in the past. I think they actually quite like Khan. And they think he's got a lot more potential. He's got a good cornerman, he's got a good coach team around him. And I think if you look at the fights he's actually lost, albeit the Peterson fight, he shouldn't have lost the fight. The fight before where he got caught as world champion, I can't remember, he got beat again. But I just think Khan's got a lot to give, and he's a fighter at the peak of his career. I think he will win, but I wouldn't back him at 4-on, put it that way. If someone said to me you can back him or lay him at 4-on, I'd be taking the money at 4-on. But I still think he'll win. But I think the price for that Khan should be around about 2-5.
He's fighting. This is a light welterweight title. I think this might be the last time he fights at this division because I think he wants to fight Mayweather.
Yeah.
So he'll have to go up a weight, which he can do pretty easily. So he's got a lot to prove, and as you say, they like him in the States at the moment. And if he wins well, in entertaining fashion, that Mayweather fight could well happen maybe Christmas time or just before. Let's have a look at the method of victory in this particular fight. Khan by knockout, TKO disqualification 5-4, by decision 7-4, and Garcia big prices by any margin of victory really.
I think he's going to knock out in the fight, and I don't think he'll go the distance. I think Khan is the right favourite at 5-4, but I think Garcia KO at 9-1's a big price. Out of the two, I think that's a decent wage as well. I don't think this fight. I'm a layer of the draw. I'm laying the fight distance. I mean, some bookies do how many minutes the fight will last. You can go over and under. I'll definitely be under here. I just got a feeling this won't go all the way. I think Khan has to impress. I think Garcia's approach is knock him out, go for it, be very strong, and I don't see it going a long way. So I think Khan to win by KO at 5-4 is the right price, and probably makes more. If punters are out there trying to back Khan, instead of backing him at the 4-on or the 5-on, I think the 5-4 for him knock him out would be a lot better bet than a 7-4 points decision.
Okay, and the good news is that you can watch both those fights because they're at different times. Obviously, the David Haye fight at Upton Park in East London. Amir Khan fights at it's Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. That'll be in the early hours of Sunday morning, our time. And that's it for part 2. And we come back. Can Bradley Wiggins win the Tour de France? And more importantly, is he worth a punt to do it? See you in a minute. Welcome back. You are watching The Punter. And although Andy Murray was beaten on Sunday, we have another Briton poised potentially to be the best in the world and win cycling's premier event. The Tour de France, Nigel, which Wiggins leads at the moment. Betting revenues on the Tour de France, not massive, obviously. You've got a view on why that is?
No, I think it's a sport that's actually coming up and up and up. I mean, as the younger people and the British people are doing very well, it's a sport that is gaining momentum as far as betting turnover. But I just think there's a lot of people who actually don't really understand the rules, the different stages. I mean, the sprints. I mean, certain people look at it and don't really get it. And there's a small amount of people who know exactly what they're doing, who capitalise on these errors that the bookmakers make, who specialise on this all the time. Now, if you look at the demographic of the average punter that bookmakers are trying to get, it's not just English based now, European based in Spain, France, all the areas like that in major European countries. They are becoming a big turnover part of online bookmakers in this country. And this, on the cycling, is where they like to bet, cycling and basketball and stuff like that. So it's really something that it's gone by us British people, and unless you're younger people coming into it. And that's what they're betting on. And so you've got to be on the ball. I remember going to a bar in Spain 5 or 6 years ago, trying to watch the Wimbledon semi-final, and the whole bar just refused to turn it. They were watching the Tour de France because Indurain was up there. There's a Spanish hero. I don't think it's going to come to the levels like that. You're not going to be walking into a bar and people aren't going to watch Andy Murray at Wimbledon. They'll be watching Bradley Wiggins.
Yeah.
But in 5 or 10 years, I think you'll see a huge turnover in this sport in terms of betting, because there's younger people out there who understand everything about it, whereas my generation, generations before, we've never been interested in it because we're not very good at it.
Right.
Now we are becoming good at it, and you'll see an uptake in the turnover.
Okay, well, let's talk to someone who knows a lot about it. Tobias Gourlay is with us, cycling expert. How are you, Tobias?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good, glad to hear it. We know that Bradley Wiggins is, what is he, nearly 2 minutes clear now after 9 stages, rest day today. How much of a dominant position does that put him in? Because clearly there's a long way to go and a lot of kilometres to go until they hit the Champs-Elysees.
It puts him in a very dominant position, I think, primarily because of that time gap, and more than that, because of the psychological blow I think he's inflicted on his rivals with what he did in a time trial yesterday.
All right, let's have a look at the latest odds then. We're back with Tobias in a moment, but the latest odds, as I said, 9 stages complete. There was a rest day today, but they'll be back tomorrow, stage 10, and that takes them up into the mountains as well. Bradley Wiggins is 4-11. This is to win the Tour de France. 9-2 Froome, sorry, 10-1 Froome. Nibali is 20s, and it's 100-1 bar. Now, the interesting thing here, Tobias, to me, is any punter's looking at that and thinking, oh, Froome is a decent bet potentially. He's third. He's only a few seconds behind Cadel Evans, but he actually can't win it, can he, unless Wiggins crashes, because he's on the same team, and the orders are that Wiggins has to win if they're both to win the race. Isn't that right?
Exactly, yes. So as you might find in Formula One, for example, team tactics play a very big part in this. And even though it appears that Froome is probably slightly stronger than Wiggins in the very highest mountain stages, he's simply not going to be allowed to leave Bradley behind, hence his much longer price.
So presumably at some point, will Froome decide that maybe he needs to join another team because he might have a crack at actually winning the thing himself?
Well, Froome also has experience of being on very bad teams in the past. He has done very little and not seen any of the limelight. So he might perhaps look for a team beyond Sky, but he's aware that there is a balancing act.
So if some of our viewers, Tobias, are considering getting on Wiggins, albeit at a pretty short price, what are the potential pitfalls that he faces, if any, between now and the end of the race?
Well, I mean, he's aced every test so far, but there are still quite a few tests to come. Not least the one tomorrow, which is when the Tour hits the Alps. So it's in the mountains, and climbing is perhaps, if Wiggins has a weakness, that is where it is. And I expect to see all of the rivals who are smarting from yesterday's besting to be attacking him from the off and all through the day.
Tobias, it's Nigel here, the bet butler. I'm not a cycling man. I'm a betting man. The only yellow jerseys I had when I was going to watch Watford and Brazil play in the 1990 World Cup. Just a very quick question. I mean, if I asked you what percentage, if you said 100% Bradley Wiggins was going to win this, so what percentage terms do you think now a 2-minute lead gives him? So if I ask you now, what percentage chance, in your honest opinion, do you think he could win this? Out of 100 times, how many times will he win it from here? I want to see if there's any value in this 4-11.
Well, I suppose there are two factors you have to measure. The first is Wiggins' kind of form, talent and ability, but there is also the luck factor as well, which, well, Wiggins crashed out of the Tour last year when he broke his collarbone, and this also has to be weighed up. But thinking about it very quickly, I would suspect he is an 80% chance.
So 4 to 11 is value then?
Well, what the bookmakers are saying, they're giving him a 74% chance of winning 4 to 11. That works out 74%. 80% would say he's a 4 to 1 on shot. That's good enough for me, Toby. I'm on, mate. Don't worry, we're on the ready. Good boy. Cheers. We need to know.
Well, Toby was talking about the 10th stage, which of course is tomorrow, and there are prices available to win stage 10. Tobias mentioned not regarded as Wiggins' speciality up in the mountains. Let's have a look at those prices. Hence, Wiggins not on that list. Cadell Evans, who's currently second overall, is a 9 to 1 shot. Nibali, the same price. Chavanel, Valverde at 20s and 25 to 1 bar. It looks pretty open, Tobias, in terms of the betting. Is that how you see it for stage 10?
Yeah, I think the difficulty here is that there are effectively 2 races being run alongside each other. There's the race to wear yellow in Paris in a couple of weeks' time, which Bradley is involved in. And then there are the riders who are chasing the kind of one-off glory of a stage win tomorrow. And so you have to pick between those 2 sets of riders before you even start picking individual riders. Yeah, the market finds that very hard to do. Hence, yes, a wide open book.
So if you had to pluck a name out for us from that list or someone else, who would you be looking at to have a genuine chance tomorrow? Or is it just too difficult?
No, if I was to choose someone who might be going for a one-off stage win, either tomorrow or the following day, which is a very similar mountain stage, there's a young Irish rider called Dan Martin who has not featured much in the first couple of weeks because he's had a bit of a cold, but he has a column for the Irish Times. He's written one on his rest day today, and he said that he is pretty much back to full fitness and raring to go for a stage win either tomorrow or the next day.
We like inside information like that.
I like. I mean, that shows you my sort of rawness in this sport. I look at that and I look at Cadell Evans, and I think, you know, any other sport you look at someone like that and say they have to win this or have to do really well to turn up the pressure on the leader, and that's how I would be reading it as a novice and as just a betting purist. So I'd look at 9 to 1, and I reckon there'd be a lot of people out there of the psyche of me saying if he doesn't win tomorrow's stage, then he can really not be considered a contender. Would I be foolish to be having my £5 on Cadell Evans to win tomorrow?
No, I don't think it's totally out of the question that he can bounce back. The only thing is that the form guide we have from the race that's been run so far says that he might not quite be the rider that he was last year. He is 35 after all.
Well, so I'll save that one. I'll go for the what was the what price? What price around about 50 to 1? The Irish guy there.
50, and you should definitely take it. 30, and it's still a generous offer.
All right, and so the same candidates presumably will be the major contenders for stage 11 as for stage 10 tomorrow. Similar sort of ride.
Yes, I think so. So anyone who has not been prominent on stage 10, keep an eye out for them ahead of stage 11 because they might fancy trying something on Thursday.
Fascinating. Why is it that certain riders, you mentioned Wiggins not particularly proficient or not as proficient in the mountains as he is on the time trials, for instance. Why do some riders prefer one sort of different discipline like that? Is it to do with fitness or physique or what?
Yes, so it's to do with both of those things, and it's also to do with natural talent, I suppose, as well. It's kind of hard to explain what that might be in a sort of a technical sport like cycling, where you don't necessarily get flair cyclists. But there's such a thing as a cycling brain as well, which can also help. But yeah, if you take the example of Lance Armstrong. He was, everyone I think knows the story about his cancer, and what happened, what changed him into a world-beating rider was that after cancer he was 10 kilos lighter, and therefore he had a much better power-to-weight ratio and was able to get up the mountains much, much quicker.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed, Tobias. I'm sure we'll speak to you again as the tour nears Paris, but for now, thanks very much.
I'll buy you a pint of Guinness if he wins tomorrow, so on me, no problem, thanks.
You see, he said there was no such thing as a flare cyclist. I was about 10. I said his wide bottom jeans, and that's the definition of a flare cyclist on my bike.
On your chopper.
Exactly, on my chopper. We're back in part 4. We've got Olympics and horse racing. Don't go away. Welcome back to the final part of tonight's Punter. You're watching Sports Tonight. We've had an Olympic theme for most of the week, Nigel, and we're going to have a little look at the Olympic men's basketball, for which you won't be surprised to learn the United States are massive favourites. I've just been looking at their record. They've competed in the men's basketball at the Olympics 17 times. They've won 16 medals, 13 golds, 1 silver and 2 bronze. So you could say they've got a bit of a pedigree
it's not
in
bad.
this event.
Not bad.
And all the pros come out from the NBA. I almost kind of like feel sorry for the rest of the competition.
I don't know why you don't fast forward it to the semi-finals. They'd be done with all the groups and all the different stages and just have them in the semi-finals already. I mean, I think what it is when they. I personally think it's more interesting for these games when they play their group games and the bookmakers do the handicaps.
Yes, because
that's
tough.
where that's tough, and that's when you've got to really earn your corner. And team news is exciting. I mean, in the Rugby World Cup, you get New Zealand playing the likes of Japan, or they play Canada, and they're 100-point favourites. And then sometimes they don't cover the spread. You know, sometimes they're going to rest some players. But that for me, the tough equation now. I mean, we all know they're going to progress further, but where the bookies, you can bet them to win it, no problem. But if you want to back them minus 28 points or the other team plus 28 points, I think it'll be a different kettle of fish when the bookies come around to them prices.
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. Let's have a look at the odds then. I mean, this will be interesting because they're not, obviously they're massively short, 1 to 5, but they're not absolutely guaranteed to win it. They have been beaten on a couple of occasions in the past. They beat Spain in the final at the last Olympics in Beijing, and Spain are reckoned to go well again. They're the second favourites. The preview piece that I was reading actually tipped up the French for a medal as well. They're a 28 to 1 shot. And so on down. Of course, the Americans have the likes of Kobe Bryant, who plays for the Lakers. I mean, you can go through their whole squad. But they should be winning. They should win this every year by like 30, 40 points.
I haven't looked at this. I didn't look at this prices until we just come on here. If you said they've won 13 out of 16, they should be around about 1 to 12. I was honestly expecting to see USA at 1 to 20, something like that, 1 to 16. 1 to 5. You know, again, I always ask the question: would I be a better of it, or would I be a layer? Would I be happy for you to have 500 quid for me to win 100, or would I be?
Yeah.
I'd be a backer at 1 to 5.
Right.
I think if they get to the final against Spain or France, they'd be 10 on, 12 on. They can't fail not to get to the final.
No, that's true.
And I think they have tremendous value. I think they'll 1 to 5, not going to make you rich, but they will win it.
I think the difference now compared to 20, 30 years ago is that there are quite a few players who play for the likes of France, Argentina, Spain, who now play in the NBA. That didn't used to be the case. It was like a bit like the Premier League in England now. 30 years ago, there weren't any foreign players. Now there are more foreign players than homegrown players. Not the case in the NBA, but they're starting to be infiltrated into these teams, the European players in particular. So it's changed the dynamic a little bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they should win comfortably. Although the last few finals, they've been points difference around about 15, so it's been comfortable without being horribly one-sided.
This competition, if they want to win it, they will win it. Purely and simply. If the Americans go there and say, okay, we want to win it, team spirit, and there's no internal frictions, they will win it. If suddenly his egos get going, and they're talking about some massive egos here, not only massive frames and bodies, but massive, massive egos to go in those frames and bodies, that's when you've got problems. But I'll take the chance at 5 on. They're going to be greeted by fanatical support. They come over to the O2 and play every year in the playoffs, in the game. The NBA comes over every year. There's a big support going on in basketball, and I think, despite the Spanish and the French having participants in the NBA, I think 5 on, I can only be a backer.
1 to 12 with Blue Square. So there's a big difference of opinion there. 1 to 5. I didn't quite catch which. William Hill are 1 to 5. Yeah. Blue Square are 1 to 12. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree. I've got to agree with Blue Square on this one, definitely.
Let's move on to just to win a medal market, because I'm interested what price, not so much the Americans, but more the French, particularly, and possibly the Argentinians, just to see if there's going to be any value here. Well, the French are 9 to 4, So that might be worth an interest. Spain are too short, USA are too short. You can't play 1 to 100. 3 to 1 Argentina. And then the likes of Russia are 7-2. I remember watching as a very small child, way before you were born, Nigel, in the 1972 games in Munich. Russia played, in fact, the old Soviet Union played the USA in the final of the basketball. There were 3 seconds left on the clock. USA had a 1-point lead, and the Russians went for the old Hail Mary. It was caught by a Russian and slam dunked with about half a second left, and they won the gold medal, and it was huge controversy. The Americans didn't even turn up to get their silver medals because they were so upset. So Russia has a bit of pedigree, but you know, I think you've got to just pay your money and take your choice. You leave out USA and Spain and find something and enjoy the tournament.
Well, all you're doing there is basically, from what I can see, is basically which one's going to get a bronze medal. I mean, the bookies are virtually saying it's going to be USA against Spain in the final. And if you look at the price difference between Spain and France to win it outright, it's not that great difference. I mean, from your first caption, I think Spain were around about 7 to 1.
Spain was 7.
And France were, what price were France?
28 to 1.
28 to 1. I mean, that doesn't really equate 2 to 9 to 9 to 4 really that much. So I think France at 9 to 4 possibly could be a bit of a bet to get the bronze medal.
They were runners-up to Spain in what's effectively the European Championship. Yeah. So they're clearly a decent side, and 9 to 4, you know, might be a bet. By the way, if you're watching last night, we had a couple of Olympic markets very firmly to the fore. The first one was China. The market for most gold medals, which country? It's effectively a 2-horse race between China and the States. The States were big odds on. We told you that pretty much every bookie had China around about 6 to 5, a bit of 5 to 4 about, but the sporting bet were a standout 7 to 4. That's not there anymore. That's now 6 to 4, best price in the village. The other bet we told you about, Nicholas Spirig in the women's triathlon, 6 to 1. You can't get that anymore either. It's down to 5s, and I expect that to contract even further. So nice to know that you're listening to us out there. Briefly, we've got a couple more markets to look at. First of all, the King George VI, which is on Saturday week. Assuming that the rain doesn't kibosh it. It can't keep raining for that long, surely. Interesting field this. We've got the Prix the Triomphe winner, and of course the Eclipse winner, Nathaniel, that was tipped up on this show by Mr. Graham.
What, to win the Eclipse or to win this?
No, to win the Eclipse.
Oh, right, okay. And so very heavily backed as well. What it was a snidey bet, because a lot of people backed it each way, knowing that So You Think was going to be pulled out the following day. So that, I mean, we took a couple of bets of £1,000 each way, 8 to 1. And you don't get a rule 4 on anti-post. No. So it was a very, very snidey bet. But it's a quality horse. I mean, it can run on all surfaces. As we've seen, it can run on good ground, run on soft ground. The ground's not going to be a problem with it. So Nicholas Abbey is a horse that just owned by Magna Tabor and Mr. Smith, Derek Smith. It's more Derek Smith's horse, this horse, but it's a horse that can be absolutely world beat and then can let you down. But Nathaniel, for me, showed a bit of fighting quality to win the Eclipse. It never usually had that in it. Before injury, it was a really impressive horse. And it might not be the sort of each way price you want to see, but 3 to 1 each way, quarter the odds bookmakers may go, some of them 50 others. But at odds of 4 to 5 a place, I can't see it being out the first 3 here. And I think it could beat St Nicholas Abbey.
Just before we go, very brief look at the Sports Personality of the Year market. Now that Murray's lost and Wiggins looks like he's going to win, that changes the dynamic completely. Wiggins is the 2 to 1 favourite, 4 to 1 Ennis, 8 to 1 Murray, who was 16s after he lost. His price was halved after he cried in the interview. Farah's 9s. Forget Ainsley and Alec, they ain't going to win it. What do you think, Wiggins?
Well, I think if we win a track and field gold in the Olympics, whoever wins the track and field gold will win it, but I don't think we'll win a track and field gold. Right. I think we'll come out empty-handed, so I think Bradley Wiggins will win it.
You heard it first here. So take the 2 to 1 because it looks like he's, according to Tobias earlier, he was, he's pretty dominant in the Tour de France. That wraps it up for tonight. Where has the hour gone? It goes so quickly. Tomorrow, Dan Roebuck will be here along with the Bet Butler. So tune in then at 7 o'clock. But from Nigel and from me for now, it's bye-bye.